Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev. And in this video, what I want to do is show you different ways to take data that you may want to send to your EJS templates, or that are through your EJS templates, but you want to access it on the front end. Because again, EJS templates are processed on the back end, but what happens if you want to create functionality that happens in the browser? So for example, the situation I'm going to use is that typically you would do separate index and show pages. So again, an index page is a page that shows all the things, and then a show page would be a page that shows one of the things. But what if you wanted to kind of create a interesting way of showing that on a single page? So I'm going to show you a few ways to do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is generate some data. So I'm going to use Bard to do that, bard.google.com. Okay, this is a great use for LLMs to kind of just generate nice dummy data. So let's say this, give me a JavaScript array of famous actors. Okay, and let's just see what it generates us. Okay, okay, here we go. Can you give me give me that as an array of objects with 5 entries, just to kind of simplify the whole deal. Oh, well, try it again. Okay. Try to give me, let's try that again. Can you give me an array of objects with information about 5 famous actors in JavaScript? Okay, just because you'll get a much interesting set of data that I can type in a short period of time without dragging this video out too long. Okay, cool. Okay, so there's my data. Okay, and we see it has 5 properties, so that's the schema. So every actor is going to have a name, an image, a birth year, a known for, and an awards. Okay, so let's first just sort of do it first let's just get this data displaying. Okay, so copy. I'm going to copy this into a file in my models folder. So I'm going to say new files, actors.js, and I'm going to say module.export equals the array. Okay, perfect. Let's just get rid of the const actors there. Okay, perfect. So now I can import this array. And what I'm doing is I'm running out of this file called scratch-server.js. So this is the code for my server. So as you can see, there's nothing crazy going on here. It's just a normal Express app. So it just has one route. This one route is just rendering this scratch index.ejs. Okay, so those are the 2 files I'm working with. Now, what I do want to do is import that array. So I'm going to say const actors equals require /models /actors. Okay, so that should go get me that data for the actors. And then I am going to send that to this index.ejs file. So I'm going to delete this object because I'm going to send a different set of data. Let's just send the actors. That's all I want to send over. Perfect. So I'm sending over that array of actors to this template. And what I want to do is create essentially index and show functionality. Now, in my index.ejs, so that's the one specifically in the Scratch folder. So I have this index.ejs right here. Okay, so just so you can see what I have, I basically have a main tag with an article on the side. So the idea is I want to create all the index in the article tag. So that's going to list all the individual actors. And I want to set it up that you'll be able to click on an actor and then their data will show up here in the aside. Okay, so I'm going to show you different ways you can do this. The first way I'm going to show you to do this is by using data attributes. Okay, and this is actually probably more ways than I will show you in this video that you can do this, but using basically using attributes for the individual components of information. Okay, so the way I would do that is like so. So first, actually, let me just move this over to the side. Let me actually bring up the page. So it's going to be localhost 3000. Okay. Oh, and I deleted the style. So let me actually just style it real quick so you can visually see this. So the main tag is going to be a flexbox because I want that article and aside to be aside from each other. So it's going to be a display flex. I want the width to be 90%. And I want the minimum height to be 600 pixels. Or actually, let's do 90% of the dynamic view height, viewport height. That'll be the minimum height. Okay, and then I'm going to want to put a border so that way you can kind of clearly see that it's there. So we're going to say 3 pixels solid red. Okay, so if I refresh this, you can now see the border, and I want to center that, so I'm going to just do a margin auto just to center that. Okay, and you see it's centered. Okay, so that's the main div. So that's all of this. So now I'm going to just kind of shape out the article and the aside so you can see where they both exist. Okay, so first I'll style the article tag. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to give it a border of 3 pixels solid green. Okay, minimum height. I want it to be 90% of the height of its parent. Okay, and width, we'll just leave it as is. So width, we'll say minimum width 40% of the width. There we go. Okay, so we see there's the article. Okay. And then I'm going to pretty much copy the same styling, just going to slightly make it slightly different for the main tag. I mean, not for the main tag, for the aside tag. Okay, and then that's going to be, we'll say orange. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to want to justify the content of those things. So justify content space around. Okay, so we're just kind of setting up our canvas that we're working with. There we go. Okay, cool. So the idea here is I'm going to want to list the actors here. So do the index functionality here, but then make it where you can click on an actor and it'll display their data there. Again, it's not going to look super nice because I didn't like spend too much time with like coming up with like the actual visual, but the idea is conceptually the functionality. Okay. So in the article tag is pretty straightforward. Here I would just basically set up the actors. So I would just do a loop in EJS. So I would just say, hey, I'm going to loop over the actors array dot for each. Okay. And one way I could do this is I could put the actors data. So we'll say data actors. So generally when you want to do like a custom property, like or a custom attribute, this typical convention is to prefix it with the word data. So you do data dash the attribute you want, and then you can create custom attributes. You can theoretically call them whatever you want, but it's just that way you don't accidentally name it something that already exists. So data actors. And then what I'm going to do here is I am going to inject equals JSON.stringify the actors data. Okay, so that way basically this is just going to equal the JSON string of that data that then my front end can grab to get access to the actual data. Okay, so I'm essentially storing that data there. Okay, cool. And then in the for each will have each actor. Well, it's a callback I have to pass in. So let me just first sketch out the callback. And then what I want is going to be each actor and then the index for that actor. Okay. So there's my loop. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create like a h4 for each actor. to keep it really simple. And then each one's just going to have the actor's name. Actor.name. Okay, and then as a property of the H4, I'm going to grab I'm going to actually give it a data index attribute. And the reason I'm giving it that data index attribute is to store the actual index. Okay, so equals the index, because again, I declared the index here, so I have access to it. Because in a for each, one of the things that the callback receives is the index. Okay, so now let's just see how that turns out. So if I refresh, could not find something I didn't close. So closed. Oh, I didn't close over here. Okay, cool. So let me refresh that again. Okay, cool. So we see that it is generating the actors. Wonderful. Now let's just take a look at what's going on in the HTML. So if I go to the HTML to take a look at what's going on, and I open up the main tag, and I take a look at the article tag. Okay, let me just make this smaller. You can see like there's the JSON of the data. So you literally, the JSON of the data is just sitting right there. Okay. And then if you look at it, I open up the article tag. We'll take a look at what's inside the article tag. We see that there's the index for each individual deal. Okay. But one problem is the JSON data. Because see, the JSON data, notice that instead of actually showing the quotations, it has like this at quote semicolon thing. So I'm going to have to like fix that a little bit later on. Okay. But now I can actually start using the JavaScript to create like the click event. Okay. So what I'm going to do is in my script tag, I'm going to grab that article tag, const article equals document dot query selector. I'm going to grab the article. Okay, and then I'm going to grab all those H4s. So I'm going to say const H4s equals document dot query selector all. So that way I grab all of them. And I want to grab all the H4s. Okay, and now I'm going to want to loop over all those H4s. And again, I'm writing JavaScript because I'm doing it here in this script tag. Okay. So I'm going to say, hey, I want to take those H4s. And then I'm going to do a loop. Actually, I'll just do a for loop for let H4 of H4s. Okay. Cool. And for each H4, what I'd like to do is take that H4 and add an event listener. So saying that, hey, when you click that H4, what I want it to do, okay, and actually even before we do that, I want to go grab that JSON data to get the actors data. Okay, so theoretically what I would want to do is say, hey, I want to create the actors variable. And I know that the article has a attribute, so I can use the function called getAttribute to get that attribute, which is called data actors. I think is what we called it. Oh, it's right there. See, yep, data actors. Okay, so I'm going to target that attribute and say, hey, I want that data. So just so you can see what's going on, let me console.log actors. So you can see right now I'm just getting the attribute, actors. So I'm getting the attribute, and if I go here, I'm going to hit refresh. And you see, when I log it, that looks pretty good. That looks like straight up JSON data. Okay. So that looks exactly as it should. Good. So in that case, then what I can do is I can then do JSON.parse, wrap that in JSON.parse. Okay. And then let's see what I get now. If I refresh, okay, and see now I have the array. So see now, so essentially I'm taking that JSON string from the attribute and then parsing it. Okay, so basically now I have the full set of data because I was able to inject it through the template. But now I have access to that data in my front end code that's inside the script tag. Because again, the EJS is backend. Anything in the EJS tags occurs on the server, but anything in my script tag occurs in the front end. okay, app occurs in the user's browser. That code gets run there. Okay, so that's the thing you got to keep in mind. Where does the code run? Does it run on the server or does it run on the client? So anything in the EJS tags on the server, anything in the script tag client. Okay, cool. So now what I can do is I can go back and create these H1 event listeners, and I can say, okay, let's do this. For every time when you click on one, okay, and actually let me just create another variable with the aside, just to save us time. Const aside equals document.query selector aside. Okay. So what I'm going to want to do, and then the add event listener is not an object. The second argument is not an object, it's a function. So let me just fix that. So I'm going to have a function that should receive the event. So there we have a function that receives the event object. And what I want is I want the index of that specific H1 or that specific H4. So I can, and I'm going to have access to that property. I could just use the event target. That's probably the smartest way to do it. Event target, okay, dot get attribute, which we called it data index. So then each of these H4s have a data index attribute. So I can say, hey, get me the data index attribute. Save that to a variable. So const index. Okay, so essentially when I click the button, it's going to go grab the index of that H4. And then what I'm going to do is say, hey, const the actor that I'm working with is going to equal the actors array, the particular actor that's at that particular index. So I'm going to go grab that specific actor, and now I can go update the aside. So I'm going to go create some HTML. So I'll go generate the HTML I need. So I'm going to use backticks. And then I'm going to use we'll say a div. Okay. And we're going to have an H1, okay, for the actor's name. So again, right now I'm not using EJS because again, this code is going to be running on the front end. So what I'm using is template literals. So I'm using JavaScript template literals because I'm using backticks to do the interpolation. EJS happens on the server. This JavaScript and script tag is happening on my client, so I can't use EJS here. So I'm going to use the template literals to set up this HTML. So in this case, what I want to inject is like actor.name /h1. Okay, and then what are the other pieces of data? So if I go back and take a look at my data, there's also an image, and we'll leave it at that. We're not going to get into all the other properties. Server.js, no, scratch server.js. Actually, no, it's the scratch index.ejs. And then we'll have an image tag whose source equals $actor.image. Okay. And that's that. Okay, so and then basically then what we would do is we would take the aside and we would update its inner HTML to equal the HTML that we just put in the HTML variable. Okay, so basically this is going to loop through each H4 and add a click event to each H4 that should do it for that actor. Okay, and then actually even before I do this, I should always empty out the aside. Actually, let me just show you what happens if I don't do that. Okay, document.querySelect. Oh, where did I write document.querySelect? Here we go, selector. Okay, let's refresh. No errors. So let's see here. I should see Tom Hanks over here if I click Tom Hanks. Okay, and the picture doesn't work. So these are not working pictures. That's fine. Okay. But see, it works. I can click. So I have the ability to I can go in there and render the rest of the information. So in that case, I'm just going to remove that image. Okay. And what other data was there? Actors, birth year, known for. Okay. So I could do, H2 birth year, actor dot birth year. Perfect. Okay, so let me refresh. And I go to Tom Hanks, birth year 1956. Cool. And see, now I've been able to replicate the show functionality because basically I'm rendering the page using the EJS, rendering the initial state of the page, but then I'm manipulating the page using my front end JavaScript. Because again, anything that happens after the page loads has to be handled by, all the interactivity has to be handled by front end JavaScript. Okay. And now I have that functionality all well and good. That's one way to do it. So one way and the way I deliver the data here is by delivering the total data as an attribute, and then delivering delivering the index for each actor in their particular element. Another way I could have done this, okay, kind of gets me to the same place, is instead of stringifying the actor here, I could have just done each individual actor one at a time. So I could have just done some saying data actor equals JSON, and then here I would have done the JSON.parse. Okay, equals JSON.parse the actor. And then what I could have done here is that every time I use the H4, instead of getting the data index, and first let's just make sure that worked. Okay, let's see here. Object is not a valid JSON. Okay, so let's take a look at how I wrote that. Actor for each group, actor index, JSON.parse actor. Oh, I wrote JSON.parse. It should be JSON.stringify because I'm turning it into a string. Okay, there we go. So now, if again, let me just double check, make sure that when I take a look at the HTML for each individual actor, so you see each actor has its data there. So instead, what I could do is I could just say, go back to the H4, instead of grabbing the actor from the index, okay, I could grab the JSON here and grab it as like data from the data actor attribute on the individual H4. Okay, and then just say, hey, JSON.parse the JSON that we just grabbed. Okay, and this should end up in the same place because the actor is still going to be parsing from, but except instead of me using the index dynamically and storing all the data on one element, I'm giving each chunk of data its own little piece of data. Okay. So if I go here and it should still work. So see, still works just the same. Okay. Another way I could have done it is I could just create a separate JSON API route and then just done a fetch. So I could go back to my server, okay, and instead say, hey, I'm going to create a show route, but not a show route that renders HTML, but just a show route that sends over the data. So I would just say, hey, like app.get. Okay, app.get /actor/ID. Okay, and res. So then we would get the ID from the URL, const ID, rec.params.id. And then basically res.json would just be the actors array, but we're only grabbing the actor who's in that particular ID, aka which will be the index. Okay, so that's it. It's just basically I'm going to grab the JSON data. So essentially I'm creating like a little mini JSON API. And then I can go back to my scratch index.ejs and I could change this differently. So instead, what we would do is this. I would make this an async function so that way I could use async await. And basically the actor would just be received this way. I would just say const actor. Okay. In this case, I would want the index, so I am going to go back and grab that index. Okay, const actor equals. fetch. Okay, and we'll come back to that fetch. So it'll be await fetch. But I still need that index. Fortunately, we do have the index for each one currently in this data index attribute. So that's one good place to store the index. So now what I can do is go grab that index. So const index equals event.target dot get attribute and get that data index property or attribute. Okay, and now I can say, hey, I want to fetch from dot slash actors slash and then put the ID in the URL. So that way it grabs the right actor. That's going to await the result because that's what the await does. It's going to wait for the fetch to happen. And then this should equal the actor. Okay, and then this should still work just the same. Okay, so now if I refresh this and I click on this, Tom Hanks. Oh, something went wrong there. ID is not defined. Oh, because I called it index. So this should be index. There we go. Because that's what I called it here. I called it index. So here I'm getting the index from the H4 because the H4 has that data index property. And then I'm putting it in the URL to grab the right actor. So let's try it again. And oh, I got undefined, undefined. Okay, so that didn't necessarily get me the right actor at the right index. So let's see why. Okay, and it's saying 404 not found. So wait, did I write, was it the URL actor? Let me go back to my Scratch server here. Oh, it is actor, so the URL was actor. So the issue was the URL was wrong. So actor / index, let's refresh the page. That still didn't quite get what I would expect. Okay, so in that case, what I want to do is just I'd like to see what I'm getting for the actor, console.log actor, and console log what I'm getting for the index. I want to see, hey, is something going wrong in this particular code, or is it the backend code? So refresh. Okay, so here's my response. Oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. Because I forget with fetch, there's an extra step. So technically this should be response. I always forget. So this is going to be the response object. And then what you do is you do const actor would be await response.json. Okay, and then that should do the trick. So just get rid of those 2 lines there. Refresh. And yeah, it works again. Okay, so see now I'm not getting the data. The only thing I'm really grabbing from the attributes now is just the index. And I could get that in other ways. Although the attributes are generally a very good way to kind of transport information. But I'm using just another route. I just created another route that delivers the data as JSON. So that way I can grab the data I need when I need to and then update the DOM. Okay. Oh, don't want to print this out. Okay. But you see I now have show and index working on the same page. Okay. This could be really useful if you wanted to do something like create a Pokedex or something like that, where basically you have the list of Pokemon over here and you see like the Pokemon show up over there, or also the different kind of cool patterns. So just a cool way to sort of like take advantage of the way HTML works to help your backend JavaScript, your EJS JavaScript, talk to your front end DOM JavaScript by storing data in those attributes, so that way they can send data to each other. Or using JSON endpoints that send, so basically building little JSON API endpoints in your Express to do that. So have a great day. That's pretty much what I want to show you guys. So again, you had 3 ways we could do it. The first way was using attributes. Okay. And actually, I'll give you one other bonus way. Okay. So if I go back to just putting the art, like what I could have also done, okay, is I could have just injected the data into the script tag. So I could have literally just EJS'd it right into the JavaScript directly. So what I could have done something like this, where I say, hey, actors, we'll say, actor const the JSON equals, and then right here we would say, I would put quotation marks, and then I would inject the JSON.stringify of actors here. So I'm not putting it as an attribute. I'm actually sticking it in the HTML. Okay. And then actually put that in the quotation marks. So let me put that here. Okay. Okay. And that's going to end up putting, so first let's just see the result of that. So if I hit refresh, let me go to the actual resulting HTML. So click here on sources so you can actually see the HTML like it's rendered. So if I go over here, and let me just bring this up. So see, there's a script tag, and you see JSON equals this big string. But notice that there you have these little symbols, like right here where it says like ampersand 34. Well, the problem is we need to replace those with actual quotation marks. Okay, so there's an extra step when you inject it in your JavaScript. Okay, so we didn't see this when we did the attributes. In the attributes, it seems to work out pretty well where it parses the JSON just like the way when I grab the attribute, it turns those into quotation marks for me. So you see, I see those there too, but it doesn't have the same. Apparently, get attribute encodes those. In this case, we're not going to have them pre-encoded for us. So then that means I have to go in there and make sure I switch those out with quotation marks. Okay, so it's ampersand number sign 34, semicolon. So then what I have to do is I'm going to say, and actually this probably I should do this as a let JSON. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to console.log JSON so you can see what it is before I do the swap. And then we're going to say, hey, JSON equals, and then we're going to convert it. So do JSON.replace all. So what this does, the first string is what you want to replace. So anywhere we see ampersand number sign 34 semicolon, anytime that shows up, I want to replace it with just a double quote. Okay. And then we'll console.log JSON afterwards. Okay, so you can see how that works. I'm going to go to console here. Okay, so you can see here the first console log, you see that ampersand $34 everywhere. But then after using the replace all to replace all of those with a quotation mark, because that's technically what it is. It's an encoding for a quotation mark. Now that looks correct. So now I can pass that to JSON.parse over here. I would just pass that to JSON.parse. So I would pass the JSON there. And then when I console log this should just be the actors array. Okay. And if I do that, and there it is. That worked. It is, let me just find that specific console log. Okay. And it works. Let me just make sure I'm looking at the right console log. I'm just going to do this. Refresh. Good. Okay. Yep. And let's see, there's the actors array. Perfect. Okay. Wonderful. So those are a couple different ways. Again, you can just ship data either through your template or through another route via JSON, and then you just fetch from that route. Okay. So you can send data over in the attributes. You can send the attribute. You can, if you're looping through something, you can send the data in each individual element, or you could just hide the entire chunk of data in an attribute in a parent element, or you could literally just interpolate it into some front-end JavaScript in a script tag and then handle it there and just use it directly from there. So again, lots of different ways you can do the same thing, and there's even more ways than that to do this. So because you could also do things like hide it in no, that's probably those are gonna be the main ways. Anything else is gonna probably be a little bit more contrived. But I'll leave it at that. I'll see y'all later. Have a great day. Make sure you like, subscribe. I'll see y'all later.